So you believe in Prophet Muhammad, you believe in his book, you believe in Quran.
I don't believe in Quran. Again, that's the wrong way of putting it. These are not things to believe in. They are signposts to the thing to believe in. Scripture as sacred history is the attempt by individuals who have confronted an extraordinary experience and who have, using the limited means at their disposal, attempted to record that extraordinary experience, often in poetic and symbolic language, deep, meaningful, mystical language, so that they can preserve it for generations to understand
So
what
you're
what
also
we
a man
felt.
of faith. So you're also a man of faith.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So to you, the risk you're taking is, I'm risking believing the Quran, not the Bible. That's your risk, right? I mean, faith is believing in something you have not yet seen. There's a lot of criticism on the book of Quran. There's a lot of criticism on the Muslim religion, a lot of criticism on the religion you represent. Your risk is, I think afterlife is, my bet is I'm going to take the route of
No.
being a Muslim versus my route is.
I see where you're coming. Yeah, I'm sorry. When you study the religions of the world, it becomes impossible to take any one of these religions all that seriously. And there's two reasons for it. One, because you instantly recognize the religious patterns, the sort of phenomena that they all have in common with each other, that they're all saying basically the same thing. And more importantly, they're saying it kind of in the same way, right? A lot of the same myths are just kind of repurposed. The myth of Jesus' resurrection is just the myth of Mithra's resurrection, right? The Strauchant in Zoroastrianism is a salvific character whose mother magically gets impregnated and gives birth to a messianic figure who brings in the end of the world. That's 1,000 years before Jesus, right? I mean, these are just the same stories over and over and over again. However, they are interlinked in the sense that they are trying to express something that, as a person of faith, I believe is real. And that is that there is something beyond the material realm. There is a real, transcendent reality beyond the physical world that
Faith,
we are locked in.
but it's faith.
It's faith, right.
It's a risk.
It's absolutely a risk.
Okay, so the risk, so there's a part of me that's sitting here listening to you for the first hour. You sound more atheist than you sound Muslim, okay? You sound more atheist. You definitely don't sound Christian, obviously. You're given the arguments of atheists. It's like I'm listening to Chris Hitchens debate his brother, or I'm listening to an atheist give their argument. That's the part. So that kind of comes back to saying, well, why do you choose to be a Muslim? Why do you choose to follow the Quran? If you're such a scholar and you're educated and you got these 4 degrees, shouldn't an educated man like yourself, who's dealing a lot on facts, not risk believing any religion and rather just be an atheist?
You are.
And a minute ago, you just said that when you look at any of the world religions, that there's flaws and there's issues and there's lunacies and then there's repeated myths. So how did you choose one rather than just being a scholar of the
very
faith?
good question. Yeah.
Say, hey, I'm the scholar of the fake. Here's all my books. I'm going to delve into certain characters, Baskerville and others like this. But you know what? No, I'm going to stop and I'm going to choose one. How do you get there?
So, yeah, this is a great question. First of all, let's try to rid our minds of these categories like atheist, Muslim. Well, if you're clearly not a Christian because you question certain aspects of the Bible, bullshit. There are hundreds of millions of Christians who would agree with everything that I just said and priests, the priests who taught me these things, right? They're not just Christians. They've given their life They're dedicated their entire life.
Well, to be fair, a lot of things are weird. Pope is saying certain things right now that the Catholic Church wouldn't have agreed with 20 years ago. And Catholics, unfortunately, are forced to agree with them.
Not forced.
Just because.
No,
well,
because he's not going to excommunicate them.
When I say forced, if you want to be part of the church and the Pope says it, oh my God, I'm either going to have to leave my rituals that I've been living for the last 48 years and go be a non-denomination or go be something else, or just say defend the Pope.
Just to be clear, that's only if the Pope threatens discommunication. If the Pope says, this is now belief, and if you don't believe it, then you are excommunicated, then yes, you're forced to believe it. But the Pope doesn't do any of that stuff, and the Pope is Christian. And so if he not a different kind of a Christian today than 20 or 30 years ago. Okay. There is no such thing as Christianity. Let's start there. There is no such thing as Islam. There is no such thing as Judaism. There is no such thing as Buddhism. There is only Christianities, Buddhisms, Islams. Christianity is whatever a Christian says it is. Buddhism is whatever a Buddhist says it is. There is no mechanism for me to say, you call yourself a Buddhist, okay, but you don't believe this part.
Interpretation
so
of the person is what you're saying.
You're not really a Buddhist. So let's start there. That's the important thing. The second thing that I think is really important to understand is that religion, all religions, are far less a matter of beliefs and practices than they are a matter of identity. And that's true of every religion in the world and every part of the world. 70% of Americans call themselves Christian. Bullshit. Bullshit. 70% of Americans follow the teachings of Christ. 70% of Americans go to church on, Sundays. 70% of Americans read the Bible on a consistent basis. The vast majority of that 70%, when they say I am Christian, they are not making a faith statement. They're making an identity statement. And that is true of Buddhists and Jews and Muslims. What we people on the outside tend to do is think that religion is just about the things that you believe. And if you don't believe what the mainstream believes, then you're not really that thing anymore.
I don't disagree with that. I'm with you there on the identity part when you say 70%.
Actually, fully agree with that.
To the question.
Wait a minute. There's some fundamentals here, right? And if a person says I'm a Muslim or a person says I'm a Christian, you dive into it a little bit, and you're more often than not, you're going to find some worldview creep in where they've made their own designation. When you take a look at the 70% of people in America that say they're Christian, there's only about 15% of those that have what you would call a biblical worldview. And these are not the Amish in the middle of Pennsylvania adopting nothing of modern technology. These are people that have an authentic biblical worldview. And at the same thing, there's people that say, well, I'm Jewish. Well, now, wait a minute. Are you a Zionist as a political state Jew, or are you authentic? So I think identity is like, you're correct about it, but we need to kind of wash that a little bit, because I can say, I'm a Southerner. Oh, sorry. Listen, I'm sorry. I'm a Bostonian. What is a Bostonian? I'm sorry. I'm a New Englander. We have all these labels. Do you know what? We just kind of take it as it is. I'm a Midwesterner. Right? You have all labels that happen all over the place, and you can't take a broad brush and just sweep everything out, Reza, because you're correct about the 70%. You are correct about the 70%. But within that, there are people that do have a biblical worldview, whether they be Jews, whether they be Muslims, whether they be Christians. Are
they the real Christians because they have the biblical worldview, and the other 45% aren't?
I think... Well, you know what? A cleric would tell you that it is my job, and I'll speak to your faith, that it is my job to ensure that I teach and I help people to calibrate what is the authenticity of their Muslim faith and the principles and tenets of Islam.
And who gave him that job? And who gave him that job? He went to school and he learned a bunch of things, and now
he also has the scripture that they have, and he can either choose.
I have that same scripture.
That's exactly right. You can be north of London, and you can be a radicalized cleric that says,
what I don't want
to the tube.
What I don't want to do is the following. Here's what I don't want to do. And by the way, there's angles I can take with Virgin Mary and the Quran and what the Quran says about Virgin Mary and what many Muslims think about Virgin Mary, and we can go that angle. But the part I was going to go with you on the Virgin Mary side, that even in the Quran they talk about is the chances of somebody being born, because a lot of people made that claim back in the days because it's embarrassing. Oh my God, you're having sex prior to this, prior to getting married. And then for the chances of that son ending up being Jesus, that's a 1 in a trillion type of a number. That's just a very random math. I'm a math guy. Very random mathematical number to come up with that. So the faith part with that is, it's tough to kind of fight against that part. But let me come back because the question was still not answered.
Yeah.
Let me come back to the question. So if your arguments, I'm listening to you, you're very critical of the Christian church in a very non-critical way. The way you're doing it is a way a scholar would do it, where the average person listens to that and they say, oh my God, what do I say to this part here? But I'll flip it and I'll say, dude, you sound like an atheist. And I can respect that. If you're an atheist, you're an atheist. If you're going to say, look, my risk I'm taking in life, I'm taking a risk that Quran's the book. I'm not taking a risk that I'm going to be a Christian. I'm taking a risk that I'm going to be a Muslim. No problem. Let's get past this part. I'm going to go to the next part on question. If you want to answer the atheist part,
I do.
You will answer it as well here in a minute. But here's what I want you to be thinking about. How do you judge a great parent? How do you judge a great parent?
By their actions.
By their actions.
Yeah, by how they raise the things that they do. That's how I judge every person.
Okay.
Things that you do.
Is it fair for me to judge you based on, like, if I see you, my imagination, I've never met your mom, I've never met your dad. This is our first interaction to get us to the audience. We've never had dinner together. I don't know your story except for what I've read, right? I see a part of you that's your dad, and I see a part of you that's your mom.
Yeah.
I see the rebel in your dad,
That's true.
okay, where he's a rebellious guy, and I see the atheist arguments of your dad when I'm listening to you, okay? But then I see also your loyalty for your mom's side and then your own independence, where I'm going to go take my route, and here's what I come up with. Listen, mom, dad, salute to you on this side, Pop. Salute to you, mom, on this side. My dad never fails to remind me that Khomeini was a big mistake, da-da-da-da-da. He called it, right? You talk about that regularly. But if we're going to judge a product based on its parents, parents, good job, you raise a good citizen, he's done well for himself, right? I think it's also fair to judge a religion based on what it produces, okay? Based on what it produces.
Absolutely.
So let's go away from, I've sat and debated with guys who know every single scripture in the Bible, but nobody follows them. They're very small. And I've sat and talked to people that are generalists who have a lot of people that follow them because of their messaging. This is not a debate of, we would need 2 days to go through. Scripture said this. Well, what's your rebuttal to this? And what about this? And what about that? We'll be here for days. 2 hours is not enough.
Yeah.
But if we were to judge a religion based on what it produces, if you had the choice to choose a country, and you can't say none, you have to choose one. If you were to say, we're starting a country together, what religion would we want to start it with? What religion would best be a good religion to be
That's a fun question.
the one to start a country with?
That's a really fun question.
I'm curious.
Okay. So let me answer the first part.
Please.
I feel like I left you hanging because you ask a professor a question, he has like 40 minutes of prelude to it. But to just get to it, I am not an atheist because I think atheism is an intellectually vacuous position. I think it's unsophisticated. I don't think it's smart. An atheist, a true atheist, right? Someone who is truly an atheist is a materialist. A materialist believes that literally nothing exists, that nothing can exist beyond my empirical experience of that thing. That, to me, is the height of hubris and absurdity, right? The idea that all that exists is the material realm and nothing beyond it is just, I would say, even scientifically absurd. Now, what is that other thing? Who knows, okay? Let's just give it a word, because that's all the word God is. It's just a word. It's not a thing. It's a word. And like all words, it has 1,000 connotations. It represents a bunch of things. But in its simplest form, let's just say what we mean when we say God is that which is beyond. that which is beyond the material realm, the thing. The question then becomes, can I access that thing? Do I have the ability to commune with it, to communicate with it, to experience it in some way? And that's a personal thing. I've accessed it. I've communicated with it. I've experienced it. People who do yoga, people who climb mountains, people who surf, and yes, people who are Christians or Jews or Muslims or Buddhists or whatever can tell you a very similar story. Yeah, I'm not going to prove this intellectually. All I can tell you is that there is something beyond, and I have touched it. I have felt it. So then the next question is, do I want to know it? Was it enough that I climbed that mountain and was like, wow, and then I went back home? Or do I want to know it now? Well, if you want to know it, it so happens that there are thousands of years worth of systems, languages. That's what really religion is all about. It's just languages. Languages are made up of symbols and metaphors that help you experience, communicate that experience, make sense of that experience. And you can pick any language you want. It is irrelevant what language you choose. Just different symbols. It's like saying, what's better, French or German? What are you talking about? They're both expressing the exact same thing. Just pick one. The Buddha very famously said, if you want to strike water, you don't dig 6 1-foot wells. You dig 1 6-foot well. Islam is my 6-foot well. But the important thing that's hidden in the Buddha's words there is that the well is irrelevant. The well is nothing more than the means to get to the water. And guess what? The water that you're drinking from is the water that every well is drinking from. So pick a well. Pick a well that works for you. In my case, for a whole host of reasons, my culture, my background, my identity, my comfort, Islam is my 6-foot well. And particularly Sufi Islam is my 6-foot well. It's the language that I use to make sense of a thing that is inexpressible. It's a language I use to talk about a thing that's impossible to talk about. And it's a language that other people understand, so I can communicate with them. They get it. We can talk about that experience. But to say that I believe in the well is stupid. People who say, I believe in Christianity, I believe in Islam, I believe in the Quran, I believe in the Torah, are doing it wrong. Those are not things to believe in. They're your well. They're the thing that points you to the thing to believe in. And so, as someone who wants a deep and meaningful spiritual life, who has experienced transcendence and wants to experience it more and understand it more, I've chosen this particular well.
Which is your risk. We've taken risk. Everybody's taking the atheist takes a risk. The Christian takes a risk.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.